Thanks for joining. Welcome to my session on Introduction to Aircraft Stress Analysis using Patron and Nastron. So before we get into the discussion and before I start presenting the slides, I would like to thank Dr. Selvakumar and his team for arranging the presentation. Thank you very much, sir. If you have any questions, so I would request the participants to kindly note it down, and probably we can discuss at the end of the session. So let's begin. So it's a small agenda what I'm going to present today. So I'm going to, for the first 10 minutes, I'm going to speak on the introduction to aircraft structures, and then probably we'll get into FEA, then give an introduction, and then move into Patron and Nastron. And finally, I have put down few case studies, few projects as case studies. So I'm going to show you the slides on those case studies, and then we can have a discussion. And finally, I'll be available for Q&A. So let's start. So probably students coming from the aeronautical background would be familiar of the aircraft primary and secondary structures. What are those? But for the mechanical students, it will be a bit of new learning. So when you look at the aircraft, there are primary and secondary structures. It is being categorized as primary and secondary structures. Why primary and why secondary? I will explain in a bit. Primary is it is the fuselage, wings, horizontal stabilizer. It is rudder, nacelles, and engines. These are primary structures which are exterior to the aircraft, which are subjected to the aerodynamic loads. And primary structures forms the major part of the structure. It protects the passengers and baggage who are traveling within. And the aircraft secondary structures are the structures that goes within the aircraft, which are such as cabin pressurization system, galley monuments, and auxiliary power unit, APUs, and those kind of stuff. So before we get into the discussion of FEA and the stress analysis side, stress aspect, physics aspect of the aircraft structures, I would like to have a 5 minutes discussion on how the companies work and what kind of things that goes into the designing aircraft structures. So I have put down a very simple layout of the aircraft structural companies or the departments. For example, like right from the scratch, when they design an aircraft, you need the high-level specifications or high-level technical specifications. We also call it as space allocated models. That is from the customer, or that is from the within the aircraft, any aircraft industry that is designing an aircraft. Usually design office or design teams, they participate in these kind of design, and the project teams, they participate in these kind of meetings. They get the high level specifications, they get the what is the requirement, they try to understand the requirement in what is the requirement we should design the aircraft for, and what is the criteria we should meet, and they understand these kind of things, and then they slowly start developing their models. It will be a DME model. DME is nothing but the CAT models. And then slowly, when there are different maturity stages or different maturity gates they have to pass through, like a PDR, preliminary design review, CDR, complete design review, and LUAR, like LUAR is the system testing. And there are different design phases we have to go through in before we get to the point of releasing the product. So once the design is complete, or once the design matures, stress and certification department steps in. We try to analyze the design, whatever they made, like make sure that it works. It is subject to the various different criteria that the client asks for. It might be a load criteria. It has to withstand so and so loading. It should not fail. Or it can be a deflection criteria. Deflection can be, for an example, the deflection must withstand 25.4, that is millimeter, that is 1 inch deflection. The deflection should be within 1 inch. Or it might be an criteria from the civil aviation rules, that is certification rules, such as, for example, like it should withstand the 3-minute the maximum loading, without any permanent set or without any deformation. These kind of various different criterias. So for the stress and certification office, for the certification teams, we get the models and drawings from the design team as an input, and then we start building up the finite element model. And then we do our own stress calculations, and then we interact with the design teams regularly. And then in case if there is any modification that is required to the design, we pass it on to the design team. And then finally, what we roll out is the stress reports or FEA reports, FEM report, that clearly shows the model or the design will definitely meet the criteria, and it can be certified. And the certification department takes care of the certification, where your YASA, like YASA certification rules and regulations or FAA regulations, those come into picture. Once this all is happening parallelly, like stress and certification guys are also responsible for the testing, product testing, and also we regularly interact with the manufacturing department, what kind of materials we use, and the procurement department makes sure that whether the materials could be procured or not, in case if the cost is very much, and what could be the alternative. And your stress calculations or FE analysis should cater for various different things. It should cater for not only the cost, or in terms of availability, if the material is not available, it should also meet those requirements also. Like you should try to find the alternate material or the alternate process spec. There are different process specs for manufacturing. So we have to have it in mind. Each company has its own process specs or own processes that put in place in order to meet their product requirements. Once the analysis is done, once the reports are being certified, stress reports have been certified, once the prototype have been developed, and once it has been tested in the test house, and once the testing has been done, they prepare the test results report, and they compare against the stress calculations FEA, and they see that once the results correlate with the FE analysis or the results from your analysis, then the final design phase is being certified and the final design phase is fulfilled, and then they goes into the manufacturing or fabrication. After manufacturing, it goes into QC, where your supply chain and different departments come into picture, and finally it goes into the assembly line and product delivery. So looking into the aircraft structures, like as I mentioned earlier, like we have primary and both secondary structures. The function of any structure is to resist the loading, is to carry the loading. The function of the primary structures such as fuselage and wings and empennage, these all provide an aerodynamic shape, and also it carries the load. In terms of aircraft, there are two primary constructions that goes. That is, one is monocoque and other one is semi-monocoque. The monocoque is just the shell member without any stiffening members, whereas semi-monocoque is nothing but the panel with the stiffeners. Imagine a panel with a stiffened panel, a plate with a stiffeners. For example, the best example would be the wings. to idealize. On my next slide, I have put down some pictures. So if you look at this typical semi-monocoque structure, where your flat skin, which is idealized as a plate, and your spar or rib that is acting as a beam, is a stiffened panel with a basically a panel with a stiffening member. Those kind of construction. So on this slide, I have put down some few pictures just for the illustration, showing the structure within the aircraft, a typical aircraft wing. The structural member that runs from the leading edge, we call it as a leading edge, and this is as a trailing edge from the from the leading edge front edge of the wing to the back end is called rib, and the ones which run along the lengthwise is a spar. Mostly these are machined beams, mechanically fastened on the mechanically fastened to the webs and mechanically fastened to the flanges. This means, and then we move on to the loads that act on the aircraft. So I have put down the various different types of loading that act on the aircraft. Primarily, there is an aerodynamic loading that is acting on the aircraft, so which is considered to be the flight loading. Again, the flight loading is categorized as the loading that comes from maneuvering, gust, and landing. And gust is nothing but your abuse loading, mainly, or the ground loads, which is also categorized as the emergency handling and the abuse loading, and the cabin pressurization loads. And other than that, there is load from the bird strike. Usually, any aircraft that is being newly developed, they try to see the possibility of the bird strike analysis. It's a dynamic analysis they do in order to evaluate what kind of force that comes onto the aircraft structure when it is hit by a bird. The primary loads on the aircraft structure is the cabin pressurization loads, or the loads that are internally developed, such as the loads from the wing box, the loads from the rudder stabilizers. But the aircraft interacts with the atmosphere and through the pressure. Similarly, for the wings, yes, it is the pressure loads, and then the reaction from the pressure loads is in terms of bending, torsion, and shear, or the combination of these all. So when you look at the specific component, spars, for example, this is like a beam acting as a beam. It can bend and shear, whereas stringers and longerons are similar to spars, but they're of very thin, and depth-wise they are short members, so they primarily resist bending. Since they are very thin structures, so we neglect the transverse effect, we neglect the shear effect, whereas ribs are mainly resist the shear loading because they run across from the leading edge to trailing edge along the wing chord. And the fuselage skin, coming to the skins act as membrane stresses, in-plane stresses, mainly plane stress criteria, plane stress theory, or the plate theory. Like typical one is the Kirchhoff plate theory, where the fuselage, where the plate member is assumed to react both in plane and the bending stresses, and the transverse through the thickness transverse stresses would be neglected. So usually for the FE analysis, if you look at the FE analysis, most FE commercial packages, they use the Kirchhoff plate theory for their coding. There are options for to get the output for the transverse shear stresses, which uses the higher order plate theory, like a Timoshenko plate theory and those kind of stuff. So whenever you're designing an airframe or aircraft structure, there are primarily three things that we need to consider in mind. One is strength, from the aspect of strength, which includes the stress strain allowables material Hooke's law primarily, whether it is linear or non-linear, whether the stresses are within the linear elastic region or it goes to the non-elastic region, non-linear. And finally, the internal loads that develop due to the external application of the force. And the second one is the stiffness, which is the compatibility things, which is strains, displacements. And the stability, it can be a buckling problem. What is the eigenvalues and what is the eigenvectors? Eigenvalues gives the displacement shapes, and eigenvectors gives the displacement values. So typical strength theories that are used in an aircraft industry is maximum principal stress theory for the most of the metallic components. We at times do use the von Mises stress theory. And in terms of composite components, we use Sahil criterion mainly. And then I have come across a few companies using the maximum strain theory, maximum strain criterion. And also we should remember the fail safe and safe life. Those two are the things. Fail safe is nothing but the multiple redundant structure. Suppose one of their link breaks, so the structure is still able to withstand the loading. So that is the fail safe, and safe life is the number of life cycles that the it could, for example, as shelf life or the service life for which the aircraft is or a particular component is designed. It is predicted to survive only for that duration. So these are the various different things that goes in designing the aircraft. The primary ones, as I mentioned, I would like to repeat, are the strength, stiffness, and the stability that goes for every component on the aircraft that we need to keep in mind while designing. So let's take a look at what kind of materials that are used in aircraft construction. So primarily you see the aircraft these days are about 90% they are composites, CFRP, carbon fiber composites, or the glass fiber composites, and the attachment lugs and the metallic items, those all, it could be aluminum, mostly aluminum. I do come across steel and its alloys on few of the attachments, such as within the cabin structure, within the aircraft interior structure, on the seat rail, on the few attachment points. It could be where the very high loading has to pass through from a gallium monument. That could be steel, but other than that, they are mostly aluminum. Coming to titanium and magnesium, those are mainly engine and landing gear parts. So what is expected is the high strength to weight ratio, bit of weight saving on everything what we design. So they do look for kind of optimizing the structure, how we can optimize and how we could save weight potentially. So in order to take the use the advantage of it, and the material should be of very high quality. like avoiding the cracks or impurities, any imperfections, because that could lead to a disaster. It can be, because the aircrafts are subject to various fatigue cycles, it can initiate the crack. So on this slide, I have put a various material that we use for on a typical finite element analysis. One is isotropic, anisotropic, and orthotropic. These are the three main materials. Isotropic has two material constants, anisotropic has 221 material constants, and orthotropic has 9 material constants, which is typically reduced to 6. So we are going to talk about this on a bit further when I'm going to speak on Nastran and Patron. So at the minute I will move on to the next slide. So let's jump into why we need FEM and why we need FEA. If you look at the FEA and FEM aspect, it is mainly used for the complex geometries, but the real-time problem which has the very complex boundary conditions and lot of various outputs are required, and variable loads and time changing loads and those kind of stuff. Why it can't be done using the classical hand calculation or the closed form solution? Yes, it could be done, but it would be a very rigorous and time consuming. So the quickest option would be modeling in FEA and solving the FEA. Your usual mechanics of materials or theory of elasticity. Mechanics of materials, we assume everything as, we bring it to the 1D assumption. Any structure you take, we consider it as a beam, rod, truss. So we boil it down to the 1D assumption. Whereas in the theory of elasticity, we boil it down to the 2D assumption, mainly plates, shells, membranes. On the finite element model, like there are the mixture of 1D and 2D and various different structures that could be solved with a very user-friendly application. Behind each finite element coding, behind each finite element application, there is a bit of coding going on. They have to code each and every element, how they behave, and what kind of compatibility conditions that each should satisfy, and what kind of internal forces or internal equilibrium that needs to be satisfied. As you see, there are few pioneers in FEM, Zinkovich, Clough, and Martin. Probably you might have heard those names. So what is FEM and FEA? So FEM, FEA, like when we have a physical problem, and then you are representing the physical problem using few differential equations, which is called governing differential equations. And then with those governing differential equations, and then you apply certain boundary conditions, which is initial value problem or boundary value problem. You use certain boundary conditions, and then you solve those differential equations. First of all, you convert when there is a bigger system, and when there is a complex system. So you convert those governing differential equations into a set of algebraic equations. There are various different methods in the finite element analysis, such as minimum potential energy method, Rayleigh-Ritz method, and there are few other methods like Galerkin method and weighted residuals method. Those all have one common purpose, is to solve the physical phenomenon, to bring out the unknowns. Unknowns would be the displacement, it could be stresses, but finite element analysis itself is an approximate process. We try to achieve the solution that is closer to the closed form solution. The same problem, if you are assuming it as a 1D assumption and using a classical mechanics of material or strength of material approach, you could get it, you could get an answer. The difference between the finite element answer and the classical mechanics way, that there could be some some percentage of difference. So FEM uses polynomial interpolation functions that goes into the equations that on applying the boundary conditions and loads, and build the matrix, stiffness matrix, and then you solve those equations at the connection points called nodal points, and then you extract the unknowns, nodal vectors. This is the basic idea of the finite element analysis. So on this slide, I have shown a typical bracket with the applied loading, uniformly distributed loading, how the physical problem is being converted into a mathematical approximation. So piecewise polynomial is the piecewise elements. A domain is being broken down into multiple elements, and then on top we are applying the loads and boundary conditions, and then you're running the model, solving. The top three ones is the preprocessor, what it does on the preprocessor, and the bottom ones is done by the post processor of a finite element tool. So what is required is the geometry, materials, and the loading conditions, load counts, forces, and the constraints that goes into the model, FE model. And FE model, it has its own stiffness because we are giving the properties for the elements, and each element would act as a spring element, whether it is springs in series or springs in parallel, and then try to compute your stiffness matrix. Whereas the loads and allowables, it can come from various different sources. It can be a tested ones or the non-tested ones, or it is the requirement which you have to meet. It can be various different things. And finally, what is output is the loads and deflections, displacements, and the loads from the finite element model, with which you could calculate the margin of safety of the reserve factor. So now moving on to the applicability of the finite element onto the aircraft structures. For the past few slides, I have given an introduction on aircraft structures, and I have also gave a very brief overview of finite elements. Now moving on to the aircraft structure. This is a typical aircraft structure where a control surface is connected to a wing. It can be aileron or it can be spoiler or something. So in this figure on the left, you see a wing, an aileron is connected to the wing through a lug. So how this could be idealized in the finite element environment, where the wing is modeled as a plate element, aileron is modeled as a plate element, and then both of them are connected using a spring element or the spider webs, the spider element. We call it as, in the Nastran patron terminology, we call it as multi-point constraints. And then we use the spring element that is representing the pin that connects the lug, because we calculate the shear stiffnesses and axial stiffnesses of the bolt, and then we give it into the spring element. Whereas on the right hand side, you can see a channel section, C-section beam, that is typically idealized into a set of plates and shell elements with the axial elements at the end. Those are rod elements. So I'm going to explain in a bit. I'm going to jump into the Patron Nastran tool, and we are going to talk further on this. On the right, it is on the right below bottom, it is the same. Whereas a beam with a Z section, how it is being idealized. I'm just showing it various different types of idealization. So what we are primarily looking at is the element forces and stresses and the displacements that is required from the finite element model. Here you can see on the left hand side, I have shown a typical rod element, what kind of forces that is expected from it or extracted from it is the axial forces. But for as a plate element, it can be a membrane forces or a shear forces. Or a typical beam like this, it can be the free body loads or the end loads that could be extracted, and we could use these kind of forces further in our calculations or whatever it is. So before using any tool, and the user has to understand there are some limitations to the tool. One is the user should be able to verify what the tool is throwing out. If the user doesn't understand the physics of the problem behind, so it would be simply a garbage in and a garbage out. The values doesn't make any sense, and there are few mistakes people do when using any finite element tool. It may not be Patron or Nastran, it may be ANSYS or Abacus, or it may be anything. So you should understand for example, very simply, people make mistakes in the units. The units may not be consistent. For example, the force might be in the metric system, and the length might be in the SI system, and they have to make sure that the units are consistent. And before doing any problem, you have to do a convergence study. You have to do if it is a very big problem, for example, you're analyzing a wing structure or something, you model it as a simple plate, a simple 10 by 10 plate, and do your convergence study. You should have the feel of the numbers. Make sure that whatever you're doing makes sense, whether you are using the right material, whether you are using the right element. Sometimes people, even with the experienced stress engineers or the experienced FE engineers, I have come across many people, they don't understand what is the physics behind, and sometimes they end up using the very higher order element for a simple lower problem, and that takes the enormous computational time and effort, and they have to repeat when the analysis goes for the quality check. And then especially people tend to make mistakes in their materials. They don't take the right materials based on their grain direction or the billet thickness, and they don't choose the right material, and they run the analysis with some other thing, and which is prone to all errors. So one has to keep in mind that FEA is just a tool, but behind any FEA there is physics involved. So going to Patron and Nastran now, I'm going to speak a bit on Patron and Nastran. So Patron and Nastran, why Patron and Nastran? Why not Abacus? There might be this question on many of you. Patron and Nastran is specifically for aerospace. It has been developed by a group of aerospace engineers from NASA. It all started back in the year 1965 when a group of aerospace scientists from NASA, they were using this coding within NASA, and then they want to further develop and they want to commercialize it. So they came out of NASA and they started their coding called Mack-Wheel-Schindler, that is nothing but MSC Patron and Nastran, which has a powerful coding for the aerospace, especially for the aircraft structures. I do completely agree that there are many commercial tools available in the market, such as Abacus and ANSYS, which are equally powerful and capable enough. most engine companies, if you see, if the most engine companies and landing gear companies, they tend to use ANSYS because ANSYS provides a lot of various different features for the 3D meshing and 3D elements with the 3D elements. Whereas Patron Naston is mainly they use it for 2D meshing, two-dimensional shell kind of capabilities and those kind of stuff. And now recently they have also introduced various different products such as Mark, Dytron, Fatigue. Those all can be used for various different industries, across various different industries, engines, rail lines, and heavy industries, etc. Those all have a fantastic capability of dynamics, fatigue analysis, and transient dynamics, etc. Because I'm not representing the Patron Naston company here. I'm just trying to see what the software or what it could provide. So when going into the Patron and looking to the Patron and Naston, Patron is itself is a pre and post processor, and Naston is nothing but the solver. So what is going in is the BDF file that goes into the Naston that comes out of the Patron. BDF Patron generates the file called BDF file whenever you model a structure in the Patron, and then whenever you submit for analysis into the solver, Patron generates a type of file called .bdf file that could be solved in Nastron. And once the Nastron solves the analysis, it generates a file called .xdb or op2, which is nothing but it has the results, and then you import these results file back into the post processor to generate your deformation plots or stress plots. So these are few run files that Nastron generates, like F04, F06, and log file. We are going to speak for a bit on this. So on this slide, I have put a sample model. What you're seeing is a just truss type structure. There's a truss type structure with a application with a load applied, like 1,000 pounds force that is being applied onto a node. So this is being modeled into the Patron with the following material and geometry properties. And what you're seeing here on the right is the file that came from the Nastron, that came from Patron, BDF file. What Patron does is any physical structure, whatever you model, it converts into a set of commands, a set of command lines that can be opened with the notepad, and it could be directly edited. Suppose if I want to change the load value to 500 or 800, directly I go here and edit it with the notepad. It opens with the notepad and WordPad. So it provides a flexibility for the user, and it's very user friendly, Patron and Nastron. And moreover, most aircraft companies, they use Patron and Nastron for structure only because of this reason. It provides much of flexibility, and it can be easily manipulated using the Microsoft Excel VBA. You can read the file, you can manipulate it, and then you can run and import the commands. Moving to the next slide, I have shown the element library within the Patron. We have various different element libraries applicable to various different loadings, various different scenarios to model the physical structure. One is the mass elements, which is 0 dimension, which is the point element. We call it as mass element. And whatever you are seeing, the naming, it's used for the command, Nastron commands. If you see this truss type structure, a truss type structure resists only the axial loading. So it can be modeled as rod elements. if I go back, the 1D elements, or the different elements, one is rod element that takes only the axial load. Other one is bar elements. It takes both axial and bending. Whereas the beam elements, there's a difference between bar and beam within the Nastron. That is, beam element takes both bending axial and as well as the moments couple. And we have similarly a set of two-dimensional elements, which is C-quad 4, where 4 denotes the number of nodes. For the higher order element, which has the mid-side nodes, there are C-quad 8. That means there are 4 mid-side nodes and 4 corner nodes, total 8. And similarly, we have tria element, we have C-shear element. Typical shell elements are C-quad, quadrilateral element and tria element. Shear element is nothing but it takes only the shear. And similarly, 3D elements, hexagon, pentagon, and tetra element. And some are axisymmetric elements. And these are the rigid elements that are used for modeling the pins, attachment lugs, and these are very important elements in Patron and Nastron. So as I mentioned earlier, like whenever you model a physical structure in the Patron, and then whenever you submit for the analysis, it generates a file which is editable using Notepad or TextPad, which is nothing but the Nastron input file. So there are different sections in the Nastron input file, which is executive control section. It talks about what kind of analysis type I am requesting and what kind of buffer memory we have and those kind of stuff. And the case control section is the for what kind of different loading, what are all the different loadings the structure is subject to. On the bulk data section, it is the physical model in terms of the elements, properties, material properties, and geometry properties. Those things go into the bulk data section. So I'm over here on this slide. I have dat file is the file which is the BDF file. I have converted into dat file for in order to edit in the text. And whereas F06 and OP2 files are nothing but the files that I'm just going back to the previous slide. Whereas OP2 and F06 are the files that come out of the solver. OP2 is used for the plots. You import that one into the, it's a binary file that is imported into the post processor for generating your plots, deflections, which is on the graphics. Whereas the F06 file is the file where your results are printed. Again, it is it could be opened with any notepad or TextPad. That is the flexibility this Patron and Nastron provides. I can completely visualize what is going on at the back end, because on some of the FE tools that are available in the market, you never tend to visualize what is going on, and all you could see is the results on the screen. But whereas on Patron and Nastron, I need not open the screen. I just with the TextPad, I will know what is going on and what it generates and what are all the numbers. Are my numbers right? With my rough calculations, I can check. I can do a cross checking. So over here, if you look at what I have put is the, on the left hand side I have put the BDF file. On the right hand side, it's the snapshot from the F06 file, which is nothing but the load resultant. I'm just applied for the various different load cases. What is the total load that is being applied? I'm just be able to visualize. I can just copy it and dump it in a spreadsheet and use for any hand calculations if I require. Okay, now I have given you a very brief introduction on Patron and Nastron. Just to give you a quick recap, Patron is the pre and post processor, whereas Nastron is the solver. whenever you create your file, whenever you create a model, finite element model in the Patron, and you send it to solver, it generates a file called BDF. And whenever the solver runs the analysis, and then whenever it prints the results, it generates the file called F06, which has the results. And the equivalent to F06 is the OP2 or XDB file, which is the binary file that is used for graphical visualization that could be imported into the post processing, and it could be visualized. Now I'm going to show you some of my projects as case studies. This is the part where we could get to discuss much more technically. So one is the detailed FE analysis. First case study would be the detailed FE analysis, what I did. So this is, if you look at the structure, this is nothing but one of the flight control surface that is being attached to the aircraft wing structure, aircraft structure, using a big attachment bracket, lug. If you could notice, like the mesh closer to the lug, it's being very much refined, whereas it grows out very coarse on the as we grow outer. The reason for this is I was interested in the stresses that is developed within this region and that is being transferred onto the lug. The lug itself is meshed with the TED10 elements. If you look at the, if you look at the two brackets, which is the snapshots of the brackets, which is below. On the left, I have put the bracket which is with the 2D mesh, on the bracket which is with the 3D mesh. You might be wondering what is the difference that makes on the finite element model. There is a difference that there is a huge difference, and there is a huge impact on the finite element model. Whenever you are analyzing a big structure, suppose you are, for example, you are analyzing a door of an aircraft, okay, with these attachments, these kind of shear cleats or these kind of brackets come into picture. So whenever then you are not interested in the stresses that develop within the bracket itself. You are interested only on the forces that act on the door interfaces. You see what I mean? That those, in those scenario, you could use the you could model the bracket with the 2D elements, because you're not interested, because you're modeling it with 3D elements would take the higher computational time. And if you're interested in the what kind of stresses or what kind of stress levels that develop within the bracket or within the attachments, then you could use the higher order elements or the solid elements, 3D elements, and then you could try to do the calculations, or you could run the analysis. But in this scenario, coming to the case study, in this scenario, I was interested in what kind of loads that transfer, and I was also interested in what kind of stresses that would develop on the aircraft lug, because we were checking the lug at that point. So if my interest is not on the lug, if I'm interested is on the structure, I wouldn't have modeled lug as a 3D element. Using 3D elements, I would have modeled lug as just as 2D elements and run an analysis. I would have extracted the bolt loads and I would have done some calculations. I would be interested on the stresses developed on the structure. But this detailed modeling, this is not a global finite element model or a bigger model, something like this. This is a local model, whereas the local model, you are interested only on the particular component, how the stresses developed within that component and what kind of loading comes onto that component. So this was modeled using a TET element, higher order element, 3D element. in order to satisfy that criteria. Okay, now what happens to the, just wondering if you guys are wondering what happens to the pin, the fasteners or the joints. How do we model the joints? We have various different options of modeling the joints in the finite element. Typically, you can use in any finite element, not particular to pattern and Nastran. In any finite element, you could use a spring element by specifying the stiffnesses, or you could use a rod element or bar element. If you want only the axial stiffnesses that come into play, you could use a rod element, or if you want the both pin bending, those kind of effects, if you're studying, then you could use the bar element, because bar has both axial and bending capability. So how do we calculate the properties? So we use a formulation called Huth's formulation, Huth formula, for calculating the shear stiffnesses for the bolts. And for the axial ones, you already know, it's AE by L. If you look at the figure over here, this is a typical skin with a Z stiffener or the stringer on the aircraft wing or aircraft fuselage. So this skin is attached, is mechanically fastened to the Z section. So how I'm modeling is, I'm modeling a skin element using a quad element, and using quad elements, and this is 2D elements, 2D elements, and then in the middle I'm connecting the nodal points using the 1D elements. It could be a rod, or it could be a spring, it could be C-bush elements. So it depends on actually what kind of forces you want to extract, and what kind of forces, what is the purpose you are running the analysis. Okay, so I did this study, and I ran the analysis, I extracted the forces, that's all fine. So now my region of interest is over here, which is not only the lug, but it's also the portion of the skin, the portion of the plate. Okay, so now I want to understand what is the effect of the pin shear on the plate. So then it becomes a plate with a hole problem. That is a very interesting problem. So if you look at the plate with a hole problem, it's like your Peterson stress concentration factors on those kind of stuff. So I'm trying to, I have taken a plate which is 2" by 2", and then I have modeled a pinhole. I have used quad elements, quadrilateral elements, shell elements, and then I'm trying to analyze what is the effect it could have. I did this study just to understand whether to make sure that my output from FE, whatever I analysis is within the percentage to the theoretical stress concentration factor. So for a circular hole, you know that KT is 3 times sigma. So if you look at this one, I ran the analysis with a couple of variations. One is I distributed the load using cosine function, using a cos theta function, cosine function. The load is applied onto the circumference of the pinhole, and the other hand, I have applied the same loading using the gap elements. Gap elements are nothing but a type of spring elements. We specify the stiffnesses, and then we try to push the pin to generate the pin shearing, pin shearing effect. You can see the displacement, how the plate is being when the pin is pushing the plate, how it is imagine you take a paper, you take an A4 paper, and then you make a hole in it, and then you put your pen or something, and you try to push it. How it will, what kind of stresses that would develop on the periphery. That is what I was very much interested. So if you look at the variations over here, one is the cosine loading and other one is the gap elements. So I have noted down the hoop stresses. Why hoop? Why not radial stresses? Hoop stresses are really important for the circumferential circumferential hoop stresses are really important because it is the one that initiates the crack. So you might have studied in the stress concentration KT, where the crack propagation starts from with a crack initiation. Crack initiation is the point where the two molecules separate. So is the peak stress point over here, and peak stress point over here. You can see the differences within hardly 2 or 3%. So the study was very fruitful. The study was provided a very good results. So moving to the next case study, this was the study on the elevator. Elevator was fully composite. It was we used the CFRP plies for this study. This is for one of the Bombardier aircrafts. So I can't specify the details, further details, because of the data protection and stuff. So what I could say is the carbon composite fabric, CFRP material. So if you look at the elevator, so there are a few ribs that goes into the, yes, this is the CATIA model. So there are rib sections, and there are some hinge sections. These metallic brackets, these hinge sections over here, what you're seeing over here, the small hinge sections, those are done using the certified using the Hank calculation. We ran the finite element analysis, and then we extracted the loads, and then substantiated the hinges using the Hank calculation. What I'm showing over here is the different region of the different regions within the elevator, that is based on the elemental thickness, property thickness. On this region it has like 16 plies, and this has 10 plies and 6 plies, and dropping it off. So for this analysis, we use the aerodynamic loading as the loads, aerodynamic values, pressure, and then the boundary conditions where arresting at the root points or the wing box points. Mostly these we also checked for because it had the elevator skin was a sandwich panel. It was having a 3 PCF core panel, aramid core. So we checked for the composite failure criterion like intracell buckling, shear crimping, and core shear, etc. And I ran the analysis for the to extract the free modes, which is free modal analysis, and extracted the roots. About 10 roots were extracted for the free modal analysis. It's same like the free modal analysis, where you extract the eigenvalues and eigenvectors, same as the buckling analysis. Eigenvalues gives the deflected shape, where eigenvectors gives the eigenvectors gives the deflected shape, and eigenvalues give the values of the mode shape. And from the F06 file, I have cross-checked what is the constraint forces, whether it is matching with the load applied. So whenever you apply a load onto your structure, imagine a beam, which is constrained at one end of the beam. Suppose you are applying a force at on the other end, your reactions, whatever reactions that develop onto the beam should exactly in equilibrium or in match with the applied loads. Otherwise, the model would act as a rigid body. So over here, you can clearly see that this is copied from the F06 file. Clearly see that the constraint forces matches with the applied loading. So the structure is in static equilibrium. Moving to case number 3. So this was for one of the Bombardier Learjet aircrafts. This is the wing test load analysis. So what they did is they did the ground testing for the aircraft. They tried to simulate the aircraft flying conditions about 55,000 feet altitude. What they did is they applied those pressure loads from the sensors using the V-filtry mechanism on the test house. The V-filtry mechanism is nothing but your simple rods and plates where they apply the loads onto the aircraft structure. So my task was to develop a finite element model that produces a correlation between the test results and the FE results, and to make sure that the test results make sense. So they supplied me with the test loads. On the test, they used the, for example, this is an aircraft wing. Sorry, this is aircraft wing. On the test, they apply they keep a simple rubber pad. On top, they apply the V-filtry loads. These rubber pads vary along the, these rubber pads, the positions of the rubber pads vary along the length of the wing, and also vary along the chord line and vary along the length. So I know from the high level specifications, I know the wing station numbers at different station in terms of rib. For example, there are 10 ribs. I know that each rib is at different wing stations, and what kind of length, chord length from the leading edge to trailing edge each ribs have. And based on the rubber pad area they used for testing, I roughly calculated what is the typical rubber pad area they use, and I try to generate the same type of loading using a MPC element, which is called rigid elements. I think back when we were discussing about the Patron and Naston, I mentioned that these rigid elements are nothing but, you call it as a spider element in the FEA terminology, where it has one master node and it has different slave nodes, where when you apply loads at the master node, it gets distributed to the slave nodes. There are a couple of types of rigid elements in Patron and Naston. One is RBE2 and another one is RBE3. RBE2 is specifically for modeling lugs and attachments and pins, because it adds stiffness to the structure, and RBE3 doesn't add stiffness to the structure, and it is an interpolation element. It interpolates the load based on the length distance from the master node to the slave node. So going back, I created the various different RBE3s along the different wing station and chord lengths in order to try to simulate the same effect as the testing. And then I ran the wing deflection case. One is positive bending, another one is negative bending. So my results were very well correlated, which is less than 2% difference. And the last case study, what we have over here is what I'm trying to show is the galley interiors, aircraft interior structure, which is the galley structure. Typically, the aircraft interior galley monuments are the composite structures. These are like glass fiber reinforced plastic GFRP plies we use. Mostly they are honeycomb sandwich panels. We use 3 PCF, 3-pound-inch core and 4-pound core. Glass fabric composite panels. This particular galley is located on an A320 aircraft, which is on the near behind the cockpit, but that is facing the aft, which is facing the tail cone. If you look at the galley, like galley is mainly used for storing the food, and you might have seen like arrows just moving the trolley. These trolleys goes into this trolley base. These are called trolley base, and we have a restraint mechanism, turn buttons that make sure the trolley stays in the base during the flight and during the landing and during the takeoff. So I built the task of finite element model. I built the finite element model for these galleys. I used the 2D shell elements, quadrilateral elements, and usually the composite structure. Whenever it is a composite, for example, even for the previous studies, like we used carbon fiber composite, this carbon fiber composite, like we were like using the MAT 8 card, which is the 2D orthotropic material. So over here also it's the same. We were using the 2D orthotropic material. So I came up with the finite element model, and whatever you're showing, these points or the interfaces are nothing but the galley attachment points. These are the points that your galley is attached to the aircraft. These are called lower attachments. It is attached to the aircraft flooring, and beneath the flooring there are seat tracks that runs. Sometimes some of these fittings are going onto the seat track. Some of these are onto the intercostal ribs that is on the fuselage, and whereas the top level top attachments are going into the aircraft ceiling B brackets. There is a type of brackets, or there is a type of lug that is coming onto the aircraft fuselage frame, ceiling frames. That is called B brackets, and these kind of small struts, we call it as tie rods, and these go into the attachment attaching to the aircraft brackets. And what I'm showing here is the typical finite element model which I have developed, and what is over here is the typical compartment loading. For the down case, I have applied the compartment loading. For different load case, there will be a different spider element. This is RBE3 rigid element, spider element, that is used for distributing the loads for the compartments. And over here it is I have applied the pressure loads from the rapid decompression load case. For this task, I was running the analysis for nearly 96 load cases that are the combination of mainly inertial and rapid decompression cases. As you know, that rapid decompression is nothing but whenever there is an emergency, or whenever there is a break in the aircraft structure during the flight, what happens is the high pressure within the aircraft try to run to the low pressure region. It is kind of flushing out. It's called rapid decompression. So that could have a major impact on the structures. And within the structure, if you look at the panels been modeled as RBE2, the panels, the attachment to the panels have been modeled as RBE2 elements. And the panel itself, I have modeled it as like quad elements. And the upper attachments, which is the tie rods, I have modeled it as rod elements, combination of 1D and 2D elements. So we ran the load cases and we extracted I have extracted the interface loads at the attachment galley attachment points. What I have shown here. There are 3 components of forces that have been extracted, and I have also computed the reserve factors, and these are the attachment allowables. If your force is exceeding the allowable, that means you are breaking the aircraft structure. So what happens is, like, if at all you happen to, if the load is exceeding the allowable, then you have to revisit your analysis and see whether the assumptions what you have made is right or not. So in case the assumptions what you have made is right, and in case it is still exceeding the allowable, then you go into the model, check the displacements, whether it is strange, whether it is deflecting strange, whether it is what is the behavior of the structure. So there are various different things that goes in design parameters that going into the structure before we come up with the final design. Whereas this attachments, if you look at, these are small metallic items. This I have modeled them as the lug, a separate type of a lug, or I have run the analysis for the for those attachments, modeling them using the TET elements, and again I use the spider elements for modeling the fasteners and the loading. I ran and then I checked the max principal stresses to make sure that those attachment areas and attachment points are well within their material allowable. These were the aluminum fittings, aluminum alloy fittings. Thank you. I'm now open to Q&A. Hello, sir. Sir.